Hey everyone, minna-sama, konnichiwa, boku no channelへyokoso. Today I'm here to talk about Only Angels Have Wings from 1939 by Howard Hawks. While I may be talking right out of my butt, in the 30s, a sort of subgenre seemed to have been created, which I like to call the flying genre. In this genre, the main setting is an airport or airfield of some kind, and they revolve around a community of pilots that live with the danger that flying brings. One of the earliest examples of this imaginary subgenre was probably Howard Hawks' The Dawn Patrol, and if this was acknowledged as a genre, then his most famous and acclaimed movie would surely be this one, Only Angels Have Wings, also made by Hawks. This type of movie fits Hawks' style like a glove, being about the camaraderie of professionals who do their jobs and duties, regardless of the dangers. Obviously, the cast is important in a movie like this, and there's a really good one here, starting with Cary Grant, probably one of my favorite actors, as Jeff, the leader of this airline company in the middle of South America, sort of a prototypical Hawksian hero. We also have Jean Arthur as Bonnie, who serves as the audience's point of entry into this world. She gets off a boat at the beginning, gets led to the bar which serves as headquarters for the airline, and decides to stay for a while. Most of the first half of the film, she basically acts as the main character. Thomas Mitchell, who seems to have been in every Hollywood movie during this time, plays a longtime flyer simply referred to as Kid. Richard Barthelmess, star of the Dawn Patrol, plays an ace pilot who joins during the course of the movie, and Rita Hayworth, before she was really famous, plays his wife. Much of the movie is centered around the evolving relationship between this group of characters, and some really interesting dynamics are created. The most crucial one is between Jeff and Bonnie, as essentially the main romantic couple. Although Jeff has sort of a cold professional exterior that Bonnie sometimes struggles to adapt to. It's also not easy when the person you love has to constantly risk his life on a daily basis. Interestingly, the movie has large sections where Bonnie is seemingly forgotten about, making this relationship only part of the movie's story and not the primary focus all the time. Another focal point is around Richard Barthelmess's character, McPherson, who is probably my favorite character in the movie. He once abandoned a plane in midair and left his co pilot to die, who just so happened to be Kid's brother. This clearly makes him the outsider of the group where no one trusts him, but the way Bartholomew acts indicates a man who has clearly come to terms with what he's done and is carrying on. He is probably the best pilot of the bunch, designating him to do all the missions too dangerous for everyone else. He proves himself by transporting a doctor to and from a mountaintop with ease. Even though he did a regrettable action at one point, he doesn't let it define him, no matter what everyone else might think of him, and eventually earns everyone's trust. But even before he does prove himself, Barthelmess's performance from beginning to end makes me confident that McPherson's a man who can be trusted. There's also the story of Kid, Jeff's best friend, who has to deal with being grounded due to worsening eyesight and working with McPherson. We also get to know Judy, McPherson's wife and Jeff's former love, who desperately wants to know what her husband did to make people not trust him. It's all these primary characters' interactions with each other that keeps the narrative driving, along with other side characters. It's this sense of community in a relatively cramped environment that Hawks movies are famous for. And although I don't think this aspect is quite as strong as it is in some of his other films, the central performances are more than compelling enough, and the highlights are real highlights, which I'll talk about later. The fatalism of these pilots, compelled to do this dangerous job, is where much of the appeal of this movie lies, and this is evident in the opening half an hour, a truly remarkable sequence of world building, theme, and character development. As mentioned earlier, Bonnie is introduced to the world of the airline by two men, Les and Joe. They both like Bonnie, but one of them is suddenly called upon to go flying for a few hours. Joe ends up being the one who has to fly, not really treating it like that big of a deal, even buying a steak ahead of time to eat with Bonnie when he comes back. Well, he never makes it back, crashing due to heavy fog and being too eager to land to rejoin Bonnie. It's a tragic death that hits everyone hard, but no one shows it except Bonnie. She hasn't gotten used to death yet. She soon learns to accept it, putting on a piano show, and now we really get the sense that death is just a fact of life for these people. Since this is a flying movie, there are of course flying scenes, but not as many as you might expect. The first true one doesn't come until halfway through, so you could tell where the film's priorities lie. But they're still very well made and exciting. Some are obviously real, and some are models, but even those are shot so well that it can be difficult to notice. Just like the whole movie, it all blends seamlessly together. I also like how we get to see the lookout guy high in the mountains, who's a crucial part of the flying scenes. He has an important job to do, but I always found this kind of isolation appealing to watch. At one point, he even has to bring a donkey inside with him, and it's almost like he's his new friend. Now let's talk about my favorite scenes. Out of the flying sequences, the first one is my favorite. Although the climactic one towards the end might be more dramatic, I love the footage from the first one, especially the long take of the plane circling the mountain in order to find a good angle to land. The footage of the background as it's circled by the plane is exciting to watch. I also love it because we get to see McPherson in action. Until this point, all we really know about him is that he's responsible for a death, so it's ironic that his mission is all about transporting a doctor and patient to save his life. I love to see characters who are known for being bad, doing good. And it's also fun to see someone being good at their job, like McPherson is good at flying. An archetypal movie scene that's almost always a dud for me is the dying scene. Usually they're on a bed, and there's usually someone like hovering over them, and they always have cheesy whispered speeches and final soliloquies. This one is an exception, as it's a dying scene that absolutely works for me. It has some of the cliches you'd expect, but the way it's handled is not cliche at all. It's the death of Kid, after he gets hit by a condor through the window which breaks his neck on the mission with McPherson. In his dying scene, he forgives McPherson, who is not in the room, by telling Jeff to buy him a drink for him. The best part, though, is when he wants everyone to leave the room. He tells Jeff, I'm not scared, Jeff. It's just that it's like doing something new. Like when I made my first solo. I didn't want anybody watching then either. Such a great line. He then asks Jeff to leave too so he can die alone. And we never see him die. That's right, a death scene where we don't see him die. And then there's the ending, which I won't completely spoil because it works better when played out. It doesn't close the movie so much as signal a breakthrough for the romantic leads, starting a new beginning. Jean Arthur's memorable cry out to Jeff is a great soundbite and a perfect encapsulation of the happy Hollywood ending. But in the end, what I love about Only Angels Have Wings is, like a lot of Hawks movies, how it's about a community of characters stuck in a dangerous situation who have to work together to get the job done. This dense South American port bar is a perfect setting for this type of adventure, filled with excitement, death, and suspense. This is a great example of the kind of movie that Hollywood used to do so well. It's one of my 1000 favorite movies. Thanks for watching my video. Goshoujo makoto ne arigatou gozaimasu. Have you seen Only Angels Have Wings? Please let me know what you think in the comments. I think of all my favorite movies as friends, and I think of my audience as friends too.